The Sharks lose in epic fashion against the Arizona Coyotes, 5-2. Arizona has a multi-goal outburst in that third period, and unfortunately, the Sharks can't pull it together. We'll have all that and more after this. But first, if you want to be a part of the show and interact with us, check us out on all the social media, that being the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube chat, Reddit, and of course all the shenanigans that go down on the Discord. All of that and more over at tealtownusa.com. I am pleased to be joined by Mark Eisenberg. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
Well, I mean, I could have done better with, a win, but at this point, I'm just taking all of the little moral victories I can out of the season and watching for more of the development, so to speak, than anything else. I've kind of made my peace with, and I should change that final because that's not 3-2, and that's what I was trying to do before. It was 5-2, but it was 5-2 Coyotes. Yeah, my mistake. But yeah, no. At this point, I'm watching for development, and I'm watching for, what the prospects and young kids are going to start to bring up. And I'm seeing some good things, and I'm seeing some major areas that need to be growing. But what'd you take away from this game? I mean, it was kind of a weird one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the exact word I was going to use. It was very weird. At times, the Sharks, well, actually, most of the game, I feel like the Sharks were very dominant, but just no finish and just some weird breakdowns in the defensive zone, some weird plays, and yeah, great goaltending for the Coyotes. So, and that was the difference, I think, tonight.
Yeah, I mean the Sharks would kind of start us off with, an interesting, I guess an interesting highlight in the fact that the second power play unit scored. That first power play unit did step onto the ice and create a few decent chances, but really it was that second unit that really drive play. And I thought, well, Scott Reedy and John Leonard did a really great job down low. Merkley actually just setting it up perfectly with a keep in on the blue line, puts the shot on net, gets tipped by Leonard, and then the tip in from Reedy. And honestly, good to see that young core on that second power play unit really push it to that first power play unit, because I think we have seen this team, I think, guilty this year of maybe feeling like the first power play unit is untouchable, and those guys are going to be set in their spaces, and they didn't really. Sometimes they can ebb and flow with the quality of power plays we get from that first unit. I think. What'd you see on the second unit, Mark?
Yeah, and I was happy just to see those guys getting an opportunity together on the second unit. I thought they had great puck movement. Merkley did a great job carrying the blue line, possessing the puck, moving it to the right players in the right spots. And then, yeah, it was just a double tip. But overall, I was happy to see Leonard get his first point because I think he's starting to get his game a little bit more together now, getting shots on net and also like carrying the puck a bit more. So, yeah, if we can see a little bit more offense from some of those depth guys, especially the young ones, could give us something positive to end the season with.
Yeah, and again, I think at this point, for anybody that's going to be recommending watching Sharks games, and the thing that I'm going to be looking for is the growth, right? And I wouldn't recommend watching a Sharks game because at this point, it's very raw. But you can start to see the little seedlings start to take root a little bit, and the one guy that I look at is John Leonard. I think John Leonard tonight did some really, really good things in that first period. I thought that the team in general looked pretty good in that first period. I didn't like the latter half of the first once Nick Ritchie scored his 10th. That one Brent Burns just gets bulldozed and misses an assignment. And really, I mean, it was a Brent Burns giveth and taketh away type of night. And it's unfortunate because the Sharks have to play with a razor thin margin anyways. When you give up that tying goal at the end of the first, it kind of deflates the team.
Yeah, and I think it was Megna who was back there with him on that play, but Megna had his guy. But the thing is, he was forced to cover two players. They get the pass right in front, easy goal there, and then you see Burns kind of just floating in the background. So not a good look there. But I agree with you on the first period as a whole. The shots were coming. It easily could have been a multi-goal period for the Sharks, but Vejmelka, I believe is how it's pronounced. He had a great period, a great game as a whole. He was just stopping point blank shots in front of the net, left and right.
Yeah, and again, I think the Sharks put up some really, really good, decent shots on net in that. In that first period, I think the shots were 11-4 in favor of the Sharks. They did have the power plays that kind of did help them out. And again, I think going into that second period, I had some good mojo going for the Sharks. You didn't like that goal in the end of the first, but hey, you go into the second and it kind of just resets the game. But then Jan Jenik with his well, it was the first of this season, but it's his third goal against the Sharks, believe it or not. And he gives the Arizona Coyotes the 2-1 lead. And this is the point where I started to feel like the Sharks kind of let the sloppiness into the game. And I think that I would say at the middle portion of that second period, you could just start to see the turnovers start to amass. You saw that the neutral zone play was getting stymied, and you were seeing that Arizona was kind of standing up a little bit more at the blue line. And it just really killed that line rotation, that good fluid rotation that we were seeing in that first period. And, Brent Burns would end up getting a goal with 14 minutes into that second period, Hurdle and Meyer with the assists there. But that was sheerly because that first line woke up. But throughout, I would say up to that point, it was pretty middling in that second period. What'd you see from him, Mark?
Yeah, I think the second period was the Sharks' worst period of the game. It was a bit more level. And like you said, Arizona is definitely getting a bit more in the play, especially after that goal. I think the first line had a few really good shifts in a row, and that ended up resulting in that Burns shot that I think it just pinged off right the inside of the post, but it was pretty ice level. It was a good shot, though, to find its way in. It's kind of a little bit more like old school Burns, where he kind of takes that shot from the point and finds a way in. But yeah, that period wasn't pretty. And I myself, along with I think the rest of Sharks Twitter, was expecting Merkley to be reassigned to the AHL right after that goal.
Right. With that tire blowout. But I mean, we did see, that was one thing I wanted to bring up tonight was, oh boy, that ice was really choppy. It looked like guys were losing their footing left and right. I think it actually whiffing yeah. Exactly, and I think it directly had a result on the horrific injury we'll talk about in that third period. But I think tonight's ice surface was two thumbs way down for me, and felt like it put the players at risk. And I think we saw it, especially like you had said. I think Erik Karlsson was really affected by the ice. I think Ryan Merkley, we saw him have that blowout, in front of his own net, taking himself out of the play. Brent Burns, had a few pretty big whiffs and some moments off of his skates. So I'm kind of glad that Arizona is moving out of Glendale at this point, because quite frankly, it's been a joke since they've been there, and they should have never left Phoenix, in my opinion. But hey, every NHL franchise wants a new building, right? So from that perspective, it was a good move. But tonight just kind of goes to show you and highlights how that ice has just not been kept up over the years, and just again, I think we'll get into the injury, but I think it did play some factors. And now we go into the third period, which is the period that I really didn't want to talk about because this was just a total onslaught by Arizona, and not through any fault of the Sharks' own. I think the Sharks had a lot of shots on net, and they pressed quite hard, but Arizona just literally swung and hit on every mistake that the Sharks made. Jan Jenik would score again, and it would be his fourth goal in 5 appearances against the Sharks, and he's only played 5 games in the NHL, all 5 against the Sharks or something like that. It's no, maybe 11 games, 5 against the Sharks, 4 goals in those 5 games. So, kind of becoming a guy, a quick thorn in the side of Sharks fans, that's for sure. But he kind of starts it off, and at that point, I think the Sharks, I don't know if it was a mental thing, but you could kind of see that they were now not as selective with their shots, meaning they were just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the goaltender. And quite honestly, this kid stood on his head. He made 19 saves, and Karl Vejmelka. Yeah, Karl Vejmelka just kept them in it and really, stole that show in the third period because he was standing on his head. You also had Barrett Hayden with a goal, and that would come with the Sharks having the goalie. No, it wouldn't come with the goalie pulled. It would come right before they would pull their goaltender at 17:02. That was kind of the backbreaker. And then Nick Schmaltz would score on an empty net unassisted, and that would be the game 5-2. And it was kind of weird because there were a lot of good things that you could pull from the Sharks. Again, you had 42 shots on goal. Vejmelka making 40 saves. You can't really account for that every night. But as we've seen with the Sharks insofar as confidence with the puck as they go into a period down, they seem to funnel more and more shots on net, but they get less selective with their shot making. And to me, a lot of those shots were kind of low danger, and they were kind of more trying to crash the net. And I get the strategy, especially when the ice is that poor. You've got to kind of adjust for that. But what was in your thinking, what was that light that just went on for Vejmelka in that third period? Because it just looked like he turned something on there, Mark.
Yeah, and he was making a lot of, I think it was, you were saying crashing the net, and there were a decent amount of those saves. There were second and third chances in close on net. I think, again, it's just a weird period because the Sharks had the shots, they had the opportunities, they had good puck possession movement, but again, a few breakdowns and it results in the back of your net. And I'm not even going to fault Reimer for this game because I don't really feel like he had much of a chance on all but maybe one of those goals. They're all just defensive breakdowns or just grade A opportunities right in front of the net, whether it was a pass or just a straight shot. But it's such a weird game to judge the Sharks because, like you've mentioned, the ice obviously was crap. They come away with 40-plus shots, and I'm talking like every line getting shots. Like you look at the third line, I think they generated like 10 or 11 shots. I don't think there might have been 1 or 2 players on the team who didn't have at least 2 or 3 shots. So top to bottom, they were getting their chances, and they looked pretty good. I feel like for the most part, moving the puck around, finding open spots, but they just didn't have like the finishing touch tonight. Obviously, the goalie had something to do with that. But also, like you said, I think some of the shots might have been a better opportunity to pass again, maybe look off for a better shot. It's just a weird game to see because you watch it and you don't think this is a 5-2 loss.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't really feel like they necessarily played well enough to get a 5-2 win. So it's a weird game to look at and say they played well, they played bad. Who really is at fault? I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah. Now I guess we'll get into that horrific injury in the third period. It happened in the later portion of the third. You had Malash and Keller driving into the Sharks' defensive zone. Keller has the the clear ice advantage. He's got the puck on his stick, and of course he's coming in on it's like a pseudo 2-on-2. Good positioning from the defenseman there from Milosh. And he's got a good stick check in on Keller. Now, when Milosh frees his stick from Keller, I don't know if it changes its trajectory necessarily into the boards, but what it does is it does affect a little bit of the way he's got to position his skates. Once he makes the correction, because Milosh has that stick check kind of in on his body, he overcorrects, loses the edge, and goes directly into the boards. The right knee takes the majority of the impact there. He then kind of topples onto his hip, and you see a dangling leg there, and this is another another bad on you on the broadcasting team tonight, and I say this from the production value because you hear Keller's screams and you hear him wailing on the ice. You see the trainers come out onto the ice with the stretcher, and I can hear the audio barely, but I'm reading the lips of the trainer, and it says he can't even move his knee. And at this point, I that's all that I heard. But you look at the knee, you look at the hip socket, you look at the femur. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. And like we had said, there had been a few certain cues and a few certain little missteps that you saw throughout the game, and you saw the way in which the puck was kind of traveling tonight. That ice looked like it was chippy, like it was kind of a lot of snow buildup, and it was chipping a lot. And so when that happens, you get guys just hitting the ice kind of at awkward angles, and those skate plates they're not skating over ice at this point. They're skating over divots, and pull out, have a toe pick, or you have where you have to make a slight adjustment with the skate blade and you lose your edge. And that's what we saw tonight. And unfortunately, you're sitting there as a Milosh, and you must feel horrible because you're the last person he's touched when he's going into the ice. But that's on no fault on his own. He had good defensive positioning. I liked the way that it was. I mean, the whistles were kind of weird in that third period because I thought that there was a lot of hooking and grabbing going on that they were allowing from both sides of the ice. But you could have called a hold there because he did technically have his arm kind of draped over him. But it was stick-on-stick contact, so I think that was kind of the saving grace there for Milosh. But again, horrible injury. And what did you see from it, Mark? I mean, I feel like
it was just just a painful scene. And when you see that happen, it definitely puts things a little bit more in perspective. You kind of start forgetting about what the actual score is in the game and the result. But the way he hit the wall too, I just honestly thought it could have been anything. I mean, it looked like even his face kind of crashed into the boards too. And at that speed, who knows? So I'm guessing it definitely was some sort of break or fracture, I think, in the leg. And yeah, it's just unfortunate situation too, because like you were mentioning, it's hard to know whether there was like a rut in the ice right there. When you watch it in slow motion, it definitely looks like, I think it was his right skate that kind of like toe picks, but then also like curves up.
Yep.
And it's like he just couldn't get traction. And at that speed, you're just not going to stop. And most likely, the way you hit the boards is not going to be pleasant. So,
I mean, he's coming on a 2-on-2 basically, and they're doing probably at least 15, 17, 20 miles an hour at that point because they're going full board trying to crash the net. And it's that one's going to keep you up at night.
I don't see a positive outcome of that injury. Like a lot of times you root for maybe just like a pull or a strain, but the way he hit the boards, I just don't see how it's not something broken or torn something. But we'll have to keep our fingers crossed for him. That it's somehow something minor.
Yeah, so from the coach, we get Keller and Malash just made contact just before Keller lost an edge. It's good to see him responsive. Yeah, kind of similar to what we had kind of explained. Keller was in pain right away, so I was yelling for the refs to blow it. That's from Logan. Of course, Logan has had, numerous injuries of the same type of magnitude, and of course, he's gonna call that play and ask for the refs to blow that immediately down, because that's catastrophic. He also had mentioned we had chances, 3 posts. We have to find a way to get more goals. We're bottom 5 of the league. We give up grade A chances in the slot. When you give up those chances, you have to score more than 2. Again, the Sharks, the offense has been the focal point insofar as the disappointments of the season, and he's not wrong. That's for sure. We turned the puck over. We kind of alluded to that a little bit in the second period, where those giveaways really did kind of show up and was very evident. And yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, we're starting to get into cliche land, because the team has had so many up and down performances. And I guess just add this one to the list. Mark, I mean, final takeaways and thoughts from the night, and what do you think the Sharks should kind of build on and focus on next for the mental victories here? Because at this point, I mean, the season is now about the mental victories.
Yeah, I think one of them obviously is the depth you mentioned, but one of the things that I've noticed is I've actually been pretty pleasantly surprised with some of the young defensemen. Like, injury play aside, I think Malash has actually been pretty good. And he was a former second-round pick, so maybe he's kind of coming into his own. But the guy, he's looked pretty steady. And, he's a big body. He plays physical at times. So I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing from him. And obviously, I think Merkley has looked far better than he did the first few games he played, and you can see the puck confidence. He's making plays that only Carlson on the team can really do back there, and he's looking good doing it. He just needs to, I think, get the puck to the net a little bit more, and which he did on the first goal. But in general, I think he needs to get the puck to the net a bit more, and I think the offense will come with time. But I'm really enjoying watching him with the puck, and I don't think he's playing that poor defensively either. I mean, except for that fall. But
yeah, and again, I give him a pass on that one. That one's kind of a freak. It's ice conditions. You chalk it up to that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for me, Mark, at this point, I don't see how you stop playing him throughout the rest of the season. I think you just let him go and keep him on that pairing with Vlasic. It seems like him and Vlasic have, kind of formed a little bit of some mojo here. It almost reminds you of early Boyle Vlasic pairing days, and it's good to see that those two have gotten on to a good rhythm. The thing that I have been really, really excited for, and really you're starting to see it now, Ryan is playing with a little bit more confidence. And you see the vision that he has. To me, he sees the ice at such a different level. He gets the guys in the corner. You have to kind of always be ready and always have your stick on the ice with him while he's got the puck, because it seems like anybody and everybody will get that puck. If you're close to the net, he's just zinging that to you or through you.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that it's now adapting to the NHL level, which is key, because even when they drafted him, one of the things they said is his offense, he just finds a way to make plays that you just don't expect. I think there's times when you see him make a pass and the forward's not even expect to receive it because it's just a great pass. And I think we're starting to see that now. It's like you said, the vision, but also the ability that comes along with that vision is just getting the puck to the place it needs to be, carrying the puck up the ice, great breakouts. So I think the offense is starting to come in terms of actual production on the score sheet, and I expect more of that going forward. But at this point, I don't see how you couldn't play him. Even when Ferraro comes back, I assume it's Megner or Malash who would sit. So he's got to be in the lineup.
He's got to be in the lineup. He's gonna push somebody off the roster at this point, to me, because the way that I see it now is you have your three dominant righty offensive of guys in Burns, Carlson, and Merks, and then you put a defensive defenseman with each of them. So with Burns, it was Ferraro for a lot of the season. Milosh, Megna have also gotten turns there. Jenik has also flirted with the Jenik pickle or with the Jenik snake combo again, but he's not really been consistent with his playing time. So you have Burns with one guy, and then of course with Carlson it was Middleton for a long time, but Milosh has slid in there nicely, and then of course you also got Nikki Knizhov on the on the horizon. It's not going to be for this season, of course, but what I'm kind of thinking now is going into the off season. To me, this team is one, maybe two defenseman heavy now at this point.
And it definitely makes that Middleton trade a lot more understandable too, because they have an excess number of D-men, and you got Knyazev also doing very well in the AHL. Yeah. So he's another guy potentially for the future. But I mean, obviously putting the
it's a good problem to have. Good problem to have, right?
Oh, for sure. You can never have too many D-men. But putting aside his contract, because we all know it sucks. But even Vlasic hasn't been terrible recently. Like he's doing well for a third pairing defenseman, which, yeah, you don't pay a third pairing defenseman $7 million. You pay them like less than $2 million. But he's been reasonably okay for the last, I'd say, few weeks.
Well, and like I said, when he was placed with Merkley, I felt like he'd breathed some new life and, showing the old dog some new tricks. I think maybe he just, again, we saw Vlasic flourish and really become that stud defenseman when he was with Dan Boyle. I mean, of course, Eddie played with Blake for a little bit, and Eddie played with Danny for a little bit, played with Ehrhoff for a little bit. Bronny for a long time, but he needs a steady partner. That's the thing, is he's had a steady guy with him, and this is the first season that I can recall him not being penciled in as a full timer, driving his own, pairing, so to speak. He's always kind of been shackled to, one of the kids, or shackled with maybe one of the, having to play on his offside, a guy playing on his offside or something. So to me, having a steady offensive righty has, I think, really helped Vlasic's game.
Yeah, and I like the pairing. So I have no issues with them staying together. I really want, like you said, them to kind of focus on just pairing someone with those three offensive guys. And then finding what fits. I hope they don't rush Ferraro back, but it sounds like he could be back in the next week or so. And then up front, we have LeBanc coming back. So hopefully another thing I'm looking for is for him to finish the season strong, because right now his value is just as low as it's going to get with that contract. So
cratered, yeah.
Yeah.
Ricky bringing up a great, a great little snippet and appreciate the talking point here. Burns to Dallas, 25% retained for a pick and a prospect. Thoughts? I mean, Dallas, you like the story as far as a Pavelski Burns reuniting there. To me, I look at a team more like New York, or maybe somebody like that who's looking for a steady veteran offensive defenseman presence that can bring along, a young up and coming blue line. And that's the kind of the part of the career arc I think Burnsy's in now, is, he's kind of the elder statesman. Yes. On one point, he's also a big focal point for this team on its offense, but I think he's a second pairing guy now. And, maybe, as far as offensive potency, kind of middle of the pack, second pairing offensive guy for me. Where do you see Burnsy, and what do you think we got to do on that blue line?
So I've seen the Dallas trade proposals for a while, because they do think that, like, if he's going to get traded somewhere, that's a spot for him. But I think with the way the cap is, there's going to be a lot of good teams that would struggle to fit him in, and they're not going to be able to trade him to a team. Like, a bad team's not going to trade for him. They're not going to be giving up picks. So it's got to be a top team. And do you want to, if you're top team, acquire a defenseman who's getting $8 million a year to play on your second pairing? I mean, if that's your missing piece, maybe. But I think the better move for the Sharks at this point, since they're saying they want to compete, right, is to, I'd say, tone down his minutes a bit. Because the one thing I think is he's been overplayed this year, and I think we've even said it in the past, is that I think with toned down minutes, maybe he could be more effective. And really, they need to embrace Karlsson as the guy who's going to get the most minutes when he's healthy. So I don't know. If there is a trade out there, I'd be happy to move on from his contract because he's definitely, I think, a diminishing talent. I still think he has talent, and I still think he's a valuable player, but he's definitely diminishing. And with that contract, I think the Sharks could do a lot with that space. But I'm not terribly optimistic. There's a move there. I don't know. It's possibly an off-season thing.
And I think that's part of the problem that I have with Bob Boughner is I think he's a little too close to Burnsy, right? Mm-hmm. And I still think that Boughner sees Burns as the Norris Trophy winning guy and not, as the, 36-year-old that he is. And look, I mean, I love me some Brent Burns, and, he has been a rock staple on that blue line. Every guy has to change his style as he gets older. He has to accept new roles. And, I think it's time for the Band-Aid to really come off the Brent Burns is the number one alpha D-man. And I think you're absolutely right. They got to pass that torch to Erik Karlsson. Now, with Karlsson, I have a separate issue of he needs to show me that he's durable, for an entire season. He's hasn't had a full 82 games in a long time. And that's scary to turn the keys over to the guy who – you can pencil him in probably for 60 plus, sure. But if you're looking for that 82 game minute muncher, he's going to, take 28 minutes a night on the blue line. I don't think Erik Karlsson is that guy either.
Yeah, and we've had some legendary luck with Burns' health because when we first acquired him, he had some health issues early on, but I think it's been 7, 8, 9 seasons with no injuries with Burns. And for your top defenseman to have that sort of health for that period of time is huge for the team.
37. But 37, yeah. Everybody. Yeah.
But like you said, it's time to kind of shift roles. I mean, we did it with Jumbo. We had to drop him down to a third line center. We didn't force him to that first line role anymore those last couple of years. So it's time to, I think, acknowledge that with Burns and at least level out the playing time. And in terms of Karlsson, you're right. I 100% get nervous anytime I see him fall a weird way or skate slowly to the bench. I'm like, oh shit, what happened? But the thing is with him, the one thing I have this season from him is I at least have confidence in his abilities. Yes. I feel like he's looked a lot more elite when he's healthy this season as opposed to prior seasons where he looked like he was just lacking.
The skating is completely different this season. He doesn't look like he's laboring to get around. And that to me is his most important asset, in his skill set is the skating. Once his skating is right, everything else falls into place for Erik Karlsson. Mm-hmm. We did see some shot diminish, early on the season because of that forearm issue that he had. But to me, Erik Karlsson has always been more important as the guy skating the puck out of the zone and at least just having enough energy in his passing. Because to me, he's a pass facilitator, right? I mean, he will shoot. Yeah, he'll take a one-timer, but it's more often than not, he looks to set up his teammates from the blue line. So to me, like you had said, I think that there's some optimism for, Erik Karlsson going forward. Finally, mechanically, he looks okay. But again, he's still got to prove to me that the durability for at least 70 games is going to be high. The other thing is, this is a guy that also plays through a lot too. I mean, and how long did it take him to get that forearm surgery before he ended up doing it?
Yeah.
So
and he's done that a few times with the Sharks where he's played through injuries and they only get worse. So yeah.
I wanted to also bring up, we've got some stats here from the next wave, just kind of looking at some of the prospects, some of the guys that I'm be interested in getting some looks here up on the big club. Joachim Blichfield. Let's talk about Joachim Blichfield. This is a guy who has not been seen in the NHL since his since his suspension on the hit of Nathan McKinnon. I don't know if that blackballed him amongst the coaching staff or what, but are we going to see Joachim Blickfield this season, Mark?
I don't know. Like, just give the guy a few games. Like, give him a chance. We're a team who lacks for offense, right? He's got a great shot. Just give him a few games. I don't see the issue. Like, I don't know. It's one of these things that baffle me. I wonder if there's things behind the scenes that go on. I don't know. It's one of those times where I'm like wondering what's going on. What are the coaches saying to each other? What is the AHL coach saying to the NHL coach? What is management saying? Like, why is this guy not gotten in a single game? Like, they've given, I feel like, everyone a game this year, and he hasn't gotten a game. Like, give the guy a chance.
Give the man a chance. Moving over into the NCAA, I mean, Tommy Bortolo and Alex Young are lighting it up. I mean, these are two guys. Tommy Bortolo is a human highlight machine for for his team in Michigan, and I am super excited, so jazzed that he's in the system, and really excited to see what he's got come camp next season. Out of the NCAA players, who kind of gets you going and wants to see him up here and get a shot?
Well, definitely Bortolo, like you said, is our top NCAA player, and he's actually going to be playing against our goalie, Magnus Krona, in the Frozen Four. So that's a game to check out. That I don't recall if it's Friday this week. I believe that's a game it's worth watching if you're a Sharks fan. Should be nationally televised. But yeah, Bortolo, I have a feeling he will go pro after this season ends. So that could be as soon as Friday, or it could be as late as the championship game. But I mean, I wouldn't even mind if the team gave him a few games in the NHL. Why not? Give him a reason, sign Go Pro, and say, hey, we're going to throw you into a few games.
Let's camward this bitch. Oh, I haven't used that one in a while. We got some other guys too. I mean, striking out of the CHL. I mean, Brandon Coe, a guy that has just burst out, and now all of a sudden, kind of looking at one of those Barkley, Goodrow, Diamond in the rough kind of players there. I mean, what are you seeing out of Coe and Robbins over in the CHL, Mark? They've got eye-popping stats.
Yeah, well, Coe had the interesting situation where he couldn't play juniors last year, so he played in the AHL, and I'm pretty sure Lacey could probably speak to this even better than I could, but he didn't look out of place, really, especially towards the end of his stint in the AHL, and then this year he's just tearing up the OHL.
He's a man amongst boys. He really is.
And with the size and the speed, and when you have speed at that size, that's always going to be something that catches eyes, so he'll definitely be at least with the AHL next year, if not possibly making the NHL. And then you got Robbins, who's just kind of a speedy player all across the ice. Like, he does everything. He plays smart defense. He's a great shooter, creates offense. Even if he's not shooting, he's passing the puck across the ice. Like, he's been an MVP caliber player for them this year. And he's another guy. There's just a wave of guys that are coming next year that probably could make the AHL, if not NHL team. The CUDA should be very interesting to follow for next season, I think.
Hell yeah. I mean, you got Linus Olberg also over in SHL. He's a nice little find in the 7th round, and actually scoring more than Eki is, but of course there's Eki, and that's the guy I think we all circle in as, okay, pencil him in, second line right wing to me, or second line left wing, because I mean, he was this close to staying anyways, but
it looked like he could have. Yeah,
I think it's gonna be his. Put it to you this way: I think he's going to become more of a core piece and an integral member sooner rather than later, and by that I mean definitely next season. I expect him to do some good things.
Yeah, and his team is currently fighting for their lives, I think, to not get relegated in like a 7-game series. But once that's done, their season's over. So he could even come and finish up, depending on how the dates align, in the AHL. I don't think they'd give him another NHL game this season at this point and burn the year of his entry-level deal after sending him back, but who knows?
And then of course, we also have Ozzy Weisblatt still there. Daniele Gushkin is also on the radar. I mean, this has been the most stocked pipeline. I had been talking about this in our Teal Town Twitter DMs for a little while, but this is the most stocked since I've seen since Pavelski's 03 class coming through, and having all of those young players. I think you had a young Seto there. I mean, at this point, I don't think Logan had been even drafted yet. But really, Torrey Mitchell had come in. It was really like that first real good homegrown crop. And I like I said, I haven't seen our system be having this much depth since the early 2000s. So I'm liking the positioning. I think that the 3 seasons of heartache have been proving fruitful on the prospect side. And I think, again, for me, it gives me hope, which therefore allows me to watch the big club with those glasses of, okay, where are these kids going to play? Where and how are we going to maximize this roster going into next season? Because there's a lot of options, and I think there's going to be a lot of interesting options come next season. Mark?
And the Sharks make you able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Assuming the Sharks make some moves to fill out the NHL lineup. I don't know if they're going to go into next season with so much youth, being that they say they want to compete. But you think about it. I mean, the AHL team is pretty much going to get almost 2 full lines of players coming in. I mean, you have most likely Bordelot. You got Ozzy, Robbins, Gushin, Ko. All these guys are going to be there. You're still going to have Rashka, who's already with them, but he's going to be on the team next year. And then even I think Ethan Cardwell could be there next year, and he's been doing very well this year. We drafted him last season, but he was a year removed from his actual true draft season.
Right.
So you have these guys joining, and I mean, it might be worth watching every CUDA game next year with all this talent there.
Well, and maybe even getting yourself a season ticket if you're in San Jose to that new rink, because one, you're gonna have an awesome new rink. 2, you're gonna have a lot of young and up and coming guys who are going to be, nipping at the chance to get an NHL spot, because there's going to be roster spots available, and I think that there's going to be a good refresh of forwards around the centerpiece that you build around Hurdle, right? With that contract, but that's who you're dictating is going to be the centerpiece along with Couture. So definitely got some really cool pieces coming and got some interesting pieces in the pipeline. It kind of gives us hope and gives us a lens to which to watch these games that we kind of still have to suffer through a little bit. And then, of course, we also get this year's draft pick too, which should be pretty high, and I would, yeah. I'm gonna stake a claim out, and I'm gonna say number 8th overall is what's gonna go to the Sharks, I think.
Okay. I think it won't be anything worse than 12th at this point. I'm just gonna keep my fingers crossed for some lottery luck, because I feel like the Sharks deserve it at this point.
yeah, the Sharks without a first overall pick, and again, I will always I will go to my deathbed saying Eric Lindros should have been wearing teal, but that being said, it'd be nice to come up with 7s on that good old roulette wheel or craps tables, whatever. Yeah, exactly, whatever. But pulling up that shark head first overall, let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll take Shane Wright.
Oh, and AJ over there manning for us. Thanks over on the Teal Town account. He wants to wait and see until the new rules come out next season from the GM meetings. We'll see. There had been rumblings that the lottery odds are going to be adjusted yet again. Who knows at this point? I mean, you got to think the general managers and the owners want to make it so that if they're dumping money into a team that's losing, that there's going to be a good shot for them to increase their odds. But again, from a competitive standpoint, from a league health perspective, it's not always best to reward the most losing franchise, because it kind of just rewards them for losing and not getting better. So it's it's a very delicate situation, and I almost wonder if maybe you do a reverse, the highest team out of the playoffs becomes first overall, and have it so that now you're fighting to be competitive all the way up to the playoffs. Just the one kind of thing that had been interesting to me, but I don't know, Mark, quick thoughts on that, and I guess we'll end it up because we're getting to that 45-minute mark.
Yeah. No, I think they've already made some of the adjustments that improve the lottery system. They've changed it that only the top 2 spots can really shuffle. They're not doing 3. And then also you can only jump 10 spots now. So you don't have teams like the Rangers finishing just outside the playoffs and then climbing all the way to the number 1 pick. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it because I'm okay with the lottery system now, and I prefer a lottery system versus no lottery system. So I don't really think they need to change much with how it is, but I also don't like the whole encouraging tanking thing. So it's a tough one to kind of pick there. It's better than like football where you just have these teams that are like 0-16 and they get rewarded with a quarterback who is forced to then play on a terrible team for like 10 years. So, yeah.
But I mean, for every Cleveland Browns number 1 overall, Johnny Manziel, I can also give you a Peyton Manning who transformed a franchise for Indianapolis. So it really is luck of the draw as far as the type of character you're going to get out of a number 1 overall pick. I mean, Sidney Crosby, for Christ's sake, saved a languishing Penguins franchise, a franchise that couldn't get sold. And he comes in and he really does mark and not mark, but creates his own legacy, lasting legacy in Pittsburgh, arguably keeping the franchise there. So, like I said, for every Ryan Leaf, there's a Peyton Manning. For every, for every Alex Ovechkin, you got a Nail Yakupov. So, yeah. And then of course, faulty synapse, the Oilers screwed up everything. Yes, they did. They broke the system, and that they're the ones for all of this. So
just call it the Oilers rule.
The Oilers. Exactly. Well, Mark, where can the people find you when you're doing these days?
Marky Mark SJS on Twitter. Really just working, grinding. I'm actually traveling up to Canada this weekend for a hockey tournament, so that should be fun.
Ooh, pictures for the Instagram. Pictures for the Instagram.
Yep, for sure.
Contact AJ. And as far as me, I'm at Eric Landy, ErikLandi, across all the social media garbage. Just been manning the Teal Town account. Picking up my hosting duties. You'll see a lot of me next month. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming up on the calendar. And in case you missed us and you want to check us out again, check us out across all of the podcasting platforms, that being Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, the YouTube Rewind. You got the SoundCloud updates. You've got Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartMedia, and of course, iHeartMusic, and of course, everything and more at tealtownusa.com. We really appreciate all the likes, subscribes, comments. We get that algorithm kick if you're commenting on these videos. So go comment away. Tell us how we doing. If you want to get your questions up on the show for the next After Dark, send us a comment. We might get you up there. Oh, yeah, Hockey Jerk, I love it. We'll end it out on this one. Hockey Jerk saying, when did we start talking about track and field, Landy? Well, with that, I think we'll end it up. So keep it real, keep it teal, and keep it real teal. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night. We will see you after tomorrow's game.